Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Happy holidays, everybody, and thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, our live Texans-Chiefs postgame show. Just a little bit late with the holiday stuff going on this weekend. We're part of the Bleav network. The guy smiling next to me is my contributor, Tom Chavarria, co-host of the Bullpen podcast. And Tom, terrible Saturday all around. Not only did the Texans lose yet another winnable game to an NFL blue blood, they lose two locker room leaders, Jimmie Ward and Tank Dell. And is anybody more jinxed than Tank Dell? This is the worst 2-year run of bad health you'll see in the NFL, Tom. You got a concussion, fractured tibia, gunshot wound, chest injury, and dislocated kneecap. And here's the thing. It's 2 season-ending injuries, Tom, caused by his own teammate on Texans touchdowns. What are the odds of that?
You said it perfectly, jinxed. I mean, this is the worst luck anybody could have. I think with all the things you laid out, really, he's constantly wrong place, wrong time guy. Like, you name it, whether it's off the field, on the field, a lot of this stuff, you just don't know how to describe it. I feel horrible for Tank Dell. This was probably one of his best games of the season. You really felt like they were starting to get that magic, that chemistry that CJ Stroud and Tank Dell had, before he got injured before. And now, you go back to the drawing board. Obviously, we wish him a speedy recovery. We hope that whatever the case may be, he comes back stronger. I've seen different reports. I don't know what you've seen. Some people feel that if it's just a dislocated kneecap, there's a chance he could come back. Some people feel like there has to be serious ligament damage, and he's done for the season. He hasn't had surgery yet, so it's just really gonna depend on what his status is as to what the Texans do. I don't know how comfortable I feel about John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson, and the guy that I didn't even know, the guy that hit him, Jared Wayne. I mean, obviously, I should know his name because he's on my team, but I didn't know who that guy was. I had to figure it out.
Yeah, and I haven't heard any of the reports that he might come back. It would boggle my mind if he was able to be back this year. We're talking, I guess, 3 weeks until the first playoff game, Tom? Is that roughly what it's going to be now?
Yeah, and they said that this is, I saw something on Twitter that said that the dislocated kneecap can be a 6 to 8 week thing if there was no ligament damage. Again, it just depends on what they decide to do with him. It would be something miraculous for sure. And obviously you have to hold out hope because you want to see that for the city of Houston, for Tank Dell, for CJ. I mean, obviously you saw what this did to him. I think it would be a tremendous boost if by some miracle he could come back. But for all likelihood, he's probably done for the season.
So you're telling me when we get to the Super Bowl, that's when he's going to be back, when the Texans get to the Super Bowl?
Could you write a better storybook ending? Oh, my God. The script would be fantastic. Sign me up. Everybody's buying a ticket. That'd be great.
Yeah, no, that's I don't think that's going to happen. That would be insanity after what we've seen. And I'm going to have a couple of rants based on the fact that it just feels like we're running in place. We're running in quicksand. On Tank Dell, when he was drafted, the concern was his size and these potential injuries because he's the smallest player in the NFL. You could argue this was inevitable, but one of these injuries was getting rolled up on while you're blocking. It's a pretty common injury. Same thing happened, though, to Shaq Mason. So, maybe it's going to be less severe, though, if you're 155 pounds like Tank Dell, and that's the problem. The other big one was getting hit right in the kneecap by your own receiving teammate, and I'm guessing Jared Wayne was supposed to be nowhere near Tank Dell on that play. It's hard to say, Tom, and I told you so on Tank's fragility is legit right now, but I mean, that's part of this equation. And you literally can't count on him going into next year. The Texans are going to have to address this issue.
I don't know. I can't look at it like that. There's plenty of players that are similarly sized around the league. You look at Tyreek Hill, and there's plenty of players that are larger that have been injured on teammates hitting them. You look at the Kansas City situation. I'm struggling with the name off the top of my head, but the guy that Patrick Mahomes hit to end his season, similar thing with a knee injury, bang, bang play. I don't want to sit here and say well, we knew this was going to happen, because that's not fair to Tank. That's not fair to.
But I don't think anybody's within like 20 or 30 pounds of Tank Dell. I mean, he's small, like by any standard. If you look around there, I'm blanking on the guy's name, but there's another player in the NFL that's his height, but he's about 20 or 30 pounds heavier. He's like 155, and do you believe that he's really 155? I mean, it's these guys usually make up a couple extra pounds if they have to, one way or the other, depending on what they're looking at. Absolutely.
Again, I'm trying to hunt down some names, but I really don't feel like Tank is that undersized that he can't play the position. I think that, if that would have been DeAndre Hopkins over there and he gets hit, he's probably losing his knee too. Like shoulder pad to knee, no matter how big you are, no matter what position you play, is not a recipe for a healthy knee.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's probably true. We're going to come back to Tank and that play later and get into yet another Bobby Slowik rant that I have, but let's dissect this possession by possession. Texans with the ball first. CJ Stroud sails an awful throw to Nico in double coverage. Tom, that pick was one of the worst decisions we've seen CJ make with no real quarterback pressure. I mean, I've seen him make some decisions with the quarterback pressure, wasn't happy with, but really nothing there to speak of. Although I got to say, overall, big picture on this game, it's as comfortable as I think Stroud's looked all year. He didn't get spooked in the pocket. I loved how quickly and accurately he got rid of the ball, and he anticipated immediate pressure. Am I right?
For the most part, yes. I truly agree that you saw a CJ that was probably locked in as much as we've seen. And this is something that I've spoken to, or that we've talked about in different shows, where I feel like this team kind of plays up and plays down to competition. Early on, this team looked like they were in a fight and ready to meet Kansas City head on. I thought that the offense looked crisper than we've seen in past weeks. The ball was coming out quick, which kept CJ clean. Obviously, there were still some issues that I'm sure we'll get into where, it didn't always work out. But for the most part, I felt like this team looked like they could absolutely be on the field with Kansas City in their stadium in a hostile environment and go get a win.
Yeah, and once you lost Tank, I mean, that was a big deal because, it just wasn't the same without him out there. That's what a difference that he makes. The Chiefs take advantage of that interception. Mahomes finishes it off with the touchdown run. The mental note I made at this point was, where was the pass rush early in the game? Mahomes scrambled for a bunch of yards, but it was more about the coverage and the room he had to run. That's the reason why he really scrambled, although maybe D'Amico's game plan, Tom, was to wear out Mahomes' bad ankle by making him run a lot. I don't know what was going on there.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that the same play where they got to Mahomes, hit his elbow, he fumbles the ball, and they get to him after the fact, and that was a 15-yard roughing the passer penalty? So forgive me if I feel like as a defensive player, you don't feel like you can touch the guy, because you literally couldn't touch the guy even when he fumbled the football. I really don't know how you get Patrick Mahomes to the ground anymore. You have to be so clean and perfect, and it's really difficult.
Yeah, I don't care. Just at least get a little bit of pressure. It just seemed like Mahomes had plenty of, like I said, he only ran because he had all this room to run. It was there. Next drive, Stroud hits Nico and Tank for first downs. Mixon's huge run puts him in the red zone, or with this offense, maybe you should just call it the dead zone. Slowik screen on second down. Awful play call. I hate screen passes in the red zone, considering the defense is working in a condensed space. It makes no sense. Typically, later on, I will expound on Slowik and screen passes. But Tom, after missing Dalton on third down, again, this is the usual missed opportunity by the Texans.
Absolutely. They're not going to be good teams kicking field goals in the red zone. It's just something that they have to clean up. They have to figure out a better way to scheme to get their players the football. I think when you see these screens, I think a lot of the time the idea is to get it to Nico Collins in any shape, form, or fashion. He's been known to take these screens and do great things with them. It's just like you said, it doesn't make sense in a condensed space to give the offense or give the defense a chance to see the offense with the football and then just center on it and attack the football where it's at. I don't necessarily know if this is Slowik calling a play and they run it regardless. I don't know if this is, okay, we don't have anything we like to check to. Maybe they just don't get out of the huddle fast enough. Whatever the case may be, they have to be able to scheme this better to get their playmakers the football and score touchdowns.
James Clancy says Aziz's appearance at the watch party ruined by heartbreaking game. I don't know if he meant heartbreaking game. I don't know if you ruined it by showing up. I thought that was pretty cool. Just the fact that Aziz was out there, and props to our guy Garrett Williams and his Texans watch party yesterday. Houston stresses.
Absolutely. A great environment. I mean, it definitely felt like a playoff vibe at the watch party. A lot of who's who with respect to social media was out there. It was a really good time. And I can't say enough how awesome it was for Aziz Al-Shaair to make an appearance at this thing. You know, a lot has been made about his character and how he's a dirty player. And to me, you don't do these things if you're really a guy that is this bad person, this evil person. You know, he was so nice, took all the pictures, signed all the autographs, you know, was talking to fans just about anything. I thought he was really cool, and it felt really genuine. I thought it was an amazing thing for him to show love to Houston fans, because he didn't have to do it. It started off as like a jest thing, like back and forth on social media, and he showed up.
Christopher says, I feel the injuries and the psyche of Stroud and the team is the end of our season. We're going to come back to the injuries and the effect of that in a little bit. So hold on for that one, Christopher. Christian Harris, he has a sack that helps shut down the next Chiefs possession. It's important to point out, Harris back played 97% of the snaps. So he's back. And the Texans put together another drive, couple of huge third down completions to Hutch and Dell. We're back in the red zone this time. Stroud with a beautiful scramble, touchdown throw to Schultz. And Tom, one thing we know better than the Pledge of Allegiance is that Stroud is at his most dangerous when he scrambles right.
I love it. I think that should be something that we should really lean into. I feel like with the way the Texans tend to kind of like run the football, regardless of situation at certain locations, right? So they ran the football up the middle a little bit yesterday, and I felt like that's the strength of the Chiefs' defensive front is the interior of it. They should have took it to the outside. They did it anyway. For me, if you're gonna have that same philosophy, turn around and roll CJ Stroud out to the right all the time until somebody figures out a way to stop it, and trust him to make a good decision from that space, as opposed to leaving him in the pocket where there's a lot of danger. Obviously, the interior of the offensive line has struggled at times to protect him. Get him out there. I don't see the issue with it.
All right. Now we're going to get to the stuff that I know fans are going to want to talk about today. The Chiefs dissect the Texans D on a long drive, get help from penalties by Barrett and Jimmie Ward, who later in the drive gets carted off the field. Ward's loss massive with Petrie out. More on that one later. Chiefs take advantage with the Kareem Hunt touchdown. The Texans try to respond before the half, but the drive stalls thanks to one of the worst penalties I've ever seen called in a football game. That Tank Dell offensive pass interference, Tom, which led to the Stroud interception, eventually changed the complexion of the game. What was that garbage?
I don't know. I don't have an answer. I can't even argue for the officials, especially with some of the calls that didn't go the Texans' way. I don't even know. Like the all season, people have talked about the Chiefs and how they've gotten favorable whistles, and it's kind of like a joke now. But it seems like every week they get more elaborate, more just egregious. I don't know what Tank Dell's supposed to do there. I'd love to hear a ruling expert tell me where they saw it. The commentator even was like, man, I don't see what they saw there. And I think he felt uncomfortable talking about it because he was right, but it was going against the officials, which I don't think they want as part of their media broadcast stuff. I can't explain it. I just can't.
After the Tank penalty, the Texans O-line doesn't help themselves. Blake Fisher gets beat, forcing an incompletion. Second down, it looked like Jared Patterson snapped the ball early. This has happened now a couple of times recently. Stroud surprised. Titus was looking at CJ on the snap, so I assume he didn't know it was coming. Third down, a jailbreak, forcing Stroud to make a bad decision. He did have Hutch open, though, Tom. If he unloads just a millisecond earlier before he's throwing off his back foot right there, it gets you in field goal range if he does.
Yeah, I think that's the play that I've seen broken down all over Twitter, right? The one where they came off the edge and the guy from ESPN, the expert Orlovsky, broke it down and was like, Spags did a good job, and CJ's really got to be able to pick up that pressure coming off the edge. I need, and this is just a personal, I wish this was the thing, and maybe it will be sooner rather than later. I need CJ to be able to change protections. I know the offensive line does it, and we just talked about the center being, young and things of that nature, and I think that starts with him. But he's got to be able to pick up some of these guys and move his running back and move his tight end to help him, because all I think happened was the ball was snapped and he ran for his life. And I feel like we're seeing that way too much. I know CJ's a very smart guy. I don't think this is something that he can't do. I really feel like this needs to be the thing. Give CJ the plays earlier, give him a chance to dissect this defense, give him a chance to protect himself. And we won't be talking about these sacks that seem like it's one every week, where it's just all out jailbreak, unguarded guy, straight to the quarterback. He had no chance.
All right. Yeah, you just mentioned something that they need to do different offensively. It comes down to that guy. We're going to get to that guy. You know what I'm talking about. But before we finish the first half and talk a little bit more, just a quick reminder, if you enjoy Houston Sports Talk, tell your friends about us. Share our links on social media. If there's a Texans angle you want us to discuss, you can always let us know in the YouTube comments, whether you're watching live or watching on the replay. To support us, give that quick thumbs up. It helps the old algorithm. And of course, if you haven't done so, subscribe on YouTube and listen on the go with your favorite podcast app. Back to the action. Chiefs take advantage of the trash penalty with a field goal. Props to Lassiter and Stingley, who made a couple of big plays in coverage, saving 7 points. But Tom, I'd call the Tank penalty at least a 6-point swing, because I know they're going to get a field goal right there, you'd assume, and then the Chiefs get a field goal. It's a big 6-point swing in a game like this.
I don't know. When you see Kaimi miss an extra point, I'm not putting any points on the board through the kicker, because he's done that the last couple of weeks where he's missed extra points, and I'm like, what are we doing?
Well, that was his first extra point that he missed all year, but yeah, he's missed some gimmies recently.
Or I'm sorry, the gimme field goal, which was the same as extra point. I apologize. But I don't know. I think the odds would have been better. He seems to do well with distance kicks as opposed to something right in front of the goal. So yeah, maybe it could have been 6 points. We'll never know. So it's really hard to beat some of these calls when you're just not operating at a high level. And I think the Texans aren't bad. They're just not clean, perfect, elite. And when you see that, it's you need those games to beat teams like Kansas City like this.
Brandon says Chiefs managed to win by one score every game with favorable penalties, saving the Chiefs' drives, ending opposing teams' drives, and non-called holds on their O-line, it's real funny to me because, I lived in Missouri for 6 years. I have friends that are Chiefs fans. They would get a big kick out of this. What, you want the Kansas City Chiefs, like one of the smaller markets in the NFL, to play more? You want to see Patrick Mahomes, I guess, but Travis Kelce's kind of washed up. Taylor Swift's washed. No, I'm sorry. Maybe that's it. Maybe they want to see Taylor Swift. I don't know, but yeah, it doesn't make sense to me that the Chiefs would get every single call. And really, there were some other ones that I think people were pointing out during this game. I look, the Derek Barnett penalty or non-penalty or whatever, it didn't really matter because that was going to be a forward pass anyway. So it wasn't going to be a turnover at all. Yeah, it did help that drive. However, these calls go either way every single week. We saw Stroud should have been called gotten one of those calls last week. Didn't happen. But that's just the NFL. It gets close and these refs don't know what to do. And sometimes they see it, sometimes they don't. Like you can't, and he did hit him in the head. There's no question about it. Derek Barnett did hit Patrick Mahomes in the head. That's part of the rule. The Texans did play scared in this final possession of the half. And I did want to talk to you about this one, Tom, because it might've seemed like a throwaway, but they had 2 timeouts, needed 30 yards for Fairbairn. they had Schultz and Ogunbowale slow releasing on the first play, even though the Chiefs ended up having just 2 guys rushing. So you had 7 on 2. On the second play, same thing, which made it almost impossible with 3 guys out in the pattern to get that, 2 quick 15-yard plays put you right into Fairbairn kicking a 58-yard field goal. If you get 35 yards, it's a 53-yard field goal, which is very manageable for him. And then Stroud runs twice and has to settle for a Hail Mary.
I get what you're saying about it. It didn't feel like it was like they were trying to do a lot with the football. I think they were protecting against turning over the football. I think that was something they knew Kansas City was going to get the ball to start the second half. They're in this game right now. I don't think they wanted to compound it with a turnover or a quick 3 and out. So they were trying to use as much clock as they could. You're not
trying to use clock there. I mean, you're trying to save clock if you're the Texans, because you got 30 seconds to get in field goal range, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, but they have 2 timeouts. So I think they were trying to manage both. I don't think they were trying to leave any time on the clock if they missed a field goal and then they're at midfield and then turn around and you need 10 yards.
You're not going to leave any time off on the clock. There's 30 seconds and you got to get 35 yards. I mean, that's the last of your worries. If you get into field goal range, then you could kill a few seconds if you have to or something like that. But that's not a factor at that point. It's like you want to get a chance to put a field goal on the board before the half and get that field goal that you just lost. And, I don't like the playing not to lose. There's too much of that with the Texans. It's the playing not to lose stuff. We see them where they get the ball with 2 minutes on the clock and it's like they don't take timeouts, they run. And then all you have a chance for at the end of the half is a field goal because you're so afraid that you're not going to move the ball on first down that you go, okay, I'm going to try to stop the other team because I know we're going to give the ball back to them. That's the mentality. And it's why I love Dan Campbell with the Lions, because he doesn't impose that mentality on his guys. His mentality is we're out there to win, score. If we screw up, I don't care. It's a winning mentality. And I don't like that about D'Amico. And I don't know if this is a Slowik call or whatever, but it's just bad moving forward. There's a quick 3 and out by the Texans D to start the third. Lassiter, nice break on third down. Let's go back to the Tank thing, because this is where the season-ending 30-yard touchdown happens. And here's the thing, Tom, and this is incredible. I was just thinking about this the other day. By my math, this was at least the 4th Texans injury this season caused by a Texan. Stroud injured Kenyon Green. Toa screwed up Petrie's shoulder. Jimmie Ward knocked out Lassiter for a couple of weeks. I think only Vietnam has produced more friendly fire injuries than the Texans have this year. I've never seen it before.
It happens. It absolutely happens. I mean, this has been a weird season for stuff like that. Obviously, it started in Kansas City. Rashee Rice was the guy I was talking about. Rashee Rice gets friendly fire from Patrick-Mahomes. He's out for the season. And Rashee Rice is 6'1", 200 pounds. And he took a shoulder from Patrick-Mahomes and he was done. Blew out his knee. So it's not great. I think that, obviously I'm more curious as to what that pattern was supposed to be. Did Tank go where Wayne was supposed to be, or was Wayne where Tank was supposed to be?
My guess is Wayne.
I mean, obviously I think CJ threw it because he saw two jerseys down there.
Who's the new guy? And I'm going to tend to blame it on the new guy that might not know which pattern to be at. And it seemed like Tank knew that the pass was coming towards him the way he went after the football. And you said it earlier, and I'll repeat it. 6 catches, 98 yards. And we're only in the third quarter when he goes out. It's easily his best game of the season. He's the MVP of this one, Tom. Him or CJ. Even going out in the third quarter, he's the MVP for the Texans. I mean, talking about for the Texans, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. It was working out. I think this was the first time we've seen it all season where they were able to find him in space and let him, run after the catch. And you were talking about a game where he's probably going over 100 yards. I can't imagine a scenario where he's probably not at 125 and maybe another score. And you're talking about, okay, regardless of the outcome of that game, hey, Tank is back. Now you put him with Nico, you really got something. I really feel like a lot of people going into this game weren't necessarily concerned about the win or loss, more so that they were able to function and play Kansas City in their building and push them. And I think they did that, but man, losing Tank definitely feels like, one step forward, two steps back.
Yeah, Chris says Tank's best game of the season. Cameron says Schultz pushing off in the end zone. You are right. There were some calls and no calls both ways. Some people looked at that Schultz touchdown as he did a little push off there, but we're going to get to Tank and what you do with this injury in just a little bit, Tom. But first, Fairbairn follows up Dell's TD by missing his first extra point of the season. As we said a little bit earlier, not a perfect catch by Townsend, but Fairbairn still got to make it. Even with a bunch of terrible karma, the Texans D tries to change the momentum. Mario Edwards, the big stuff at midfield on fourth down. Just when things start looking good, one of the Texans fans' favorite whipping boys this season, Dalton Schultz, drops a great throw by Stroud on third. I mean, he just did a fantastic job. Saw the rush coming, immediately gets rid of it, right on the money. So the Texans, Tom, they can't take advantage. It's a momentum changer because the Chiefs immediately go 80 yards and score.
Yeah, it's really tough. I wish I could say there's a reason for Dalton not to catch that football. He absolutely has to catch that. Everything was right other than the catch. I think the call was good. I think the protection, it was not picked up, but I think CJ recognized the heat this time. Hit the hot route, which we've never seen or haven't seen as much, where CJ's normally just scrambling, trying to survive, and everything was good except the catch. And like you said, I really feel like that's the kind of momentum that the Kansas City thrives on. If they get a stop, they immediately feel like they've got to put points on the board behind it, to really enforce, okay, you had a shot and you wasted it. And Kansas City does it better than anybody else in the league, and that's exactly what they did.
This offense just can't help out their defense when their defense makes something happen. And this has been a continual issue all year. And you know what I said earlier this week? I wanted more Irv Smith at tight end because of his blocking. Just a little quick check, 18 snaps, 31% of the snaps for the Texans. So Irv did play a little bit. Dalton had the TD earlier, so it's hard to argue with him completely in this game, but he had 5 catches on 8 targets for 48 yards. Irv, he's a waiver wire pickup, so he's probably available for a reason to the Texans. And just for reference, by the way, on Dalton's catch percentage, it's the lowest of his career if you don't count 2019 when he barely played. Same for yards per catch for Dalton, the lowest of his career. And Tom, if you just released him in the offseason, it's a $16 million dead cap hit.
Yeah, it's not good. Obviously, they felt that Dalton was a big part of this team and that they would be able to use him. And I think that with all the new toys that they have, he's been lost in the shuffle. I do think they try to get him the football, but it's really tough when you have to make the most of limited opportunities. We're always talking about 5, 6, 3, 4 targets, and you miss one, you miss 2. They're magnified. Where if Tank gets 10 targets and catches 6 of them, you're like, well, Tank had a good game. Or if Nico does that, Nico had a good game. Or when Diggs did that, Diggs was phenomenal. Let me take that back. But I understand not catching every ball. I wish it was better. I wish it was better from Dalton Schultz.
It's an inordinate amount of times too that you just see him blocking and he's pushed back. I mean, it's like, oh, Dalton's blocking, and Dalton's blocking because he's usually about 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage because this guy knocks him back about 5 yards. So, that's part of the issue. That's part of the reason why you kind of hate Dalton Schultz, because you get to see that a lot. And that's, again, a little bit on the OC, who keep holding on. I'm getting there. So Xavier Worthy catches the touchdown pass after the 80-yard drive. Not sure if you heard this in the postgame, Tom. Worthy said when they asked him about that play, he said he knew what to do because the Texans were in zone. He was then asked, when did he know the Texans were in zone? He said, because the Texans yelled out, zone it, zone it.
Fun fact, because I was doing some homework because we talked about Tank's size. Tank Dell is 5'10", 165 pounds. Xavier Worthy is 5'11", 165 pounds.
No, Tank is not 5'10". He's about 5'6" or something like that.
According to his he is 5'10" and 165 pounds.
No, that's wrong. He was 155 coming out. I don't think he's gained 10 pounds. And I know he's not 5'10". There's no way Tank is 5'10". Absolutely. I will bet you money. You go find Tank Dell, Tom. Go somewhere where Tank Dell is. Stand next to him and tell me that the guy is 5'10". There's no way. There's no way.
I don't make up what they put on the internet. I just read it. So if you want to argue with what the scale says or what the tape measure says, you can. They do the same thing with Jose Altuve, and we say, nah, that's not true.
Where are you seeing this? What side is this on?
ESPN. He's 5'10", 165 pounds.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm not making these numbers up.
Yeah, I'd like to go to the combine numbers on that, because that doesn't sound exactly right to me. But anyway, the Texans get into the end zone on the next drive, settle for a field goal. When they got a first down on the 10, Stroud, this is something he's got to correct. He's sometimes just got to get rid of the ball. He screws up on a scramble right, takes a 5-yard loss, just going out of bounds, just kind of pulls an Orlovsky there instead of just firing out of the end zone. But Tom, this drive, this is where we get to Bobby Slow, Slowik, and Slowest. That's what I just want to call his new nickname as. It just made me want to throw up. Two delay of game penalties, one drive. Okay. Earlier in the game, they called timeout to avoid another delay. This game was everything that I hate about him as an offensive coordinator. Multiple bad screens, which I'd call the canary in the coal mine of a bad offense. Here are the results of the 4 wide receiver screen plays. 2nd and 12, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 13, 3rd and 9, -9 yards. Now, Hutchinson helped kill 2 of the screens by missing his block. I don't know if it was all Hutchinson on those screens, but if it's not working, if the screens aren't working, why do you keep going back to it? It's not working the whole game. The one time a screen worked was when he faked it and he goes to Joe Mixon. Slow, snail-like pacing doesn't just cost timeouts and doesn't just cost penalties, but also, and this is gigantic, it allows your opponents to time up snaps, leading Stroud and the O-line to be sitting ducks. And if Slowik is still on the sidelines next year, Tom, after all the stuff that we've talked about this season and all the things that just don't get corrected, then this is not a serious organization. And there's going to be pitchforks and guys, Texans fans, running at Kirby trying to go after Bobby Slowik. How does he survive all of this? He needs to go.
Well, if you ask a lot of those fans, they've already outed Bobby Slowik a long time ago. I think that right now, it doesn't matter what he does from here till the end of the season. People are going to call for his job, and maybe
calling for his job.
Yeah,
at present tense. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what changes that. I mean, they could go to the AFC Championship game and they would still want Bobby Slowik out. And some of it I do believe is his fault. Some of it I think, early in the season, you had offensive line issues. There were false starts everywhere. You notice we haven't had a whole lot of false start issues lately. Maybe they simplified some stuff. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm just saying that was a huge thing early in the season. It didn't matter who it was, pick an offensive lineman. He was jumping offside. Now the last three games, I'd like to say 4 games, we haven't seen that. They've been pretty
but there are still details on the offensive line. And again, Strausser needs to go too. I mean, we're going to make no bones about that. Just talking to Houston Stressens the other day, I asked, which would you rather see go? He picked Strausser, but this isn't an either or thing for the Texans. They can actually get rid of both guys. That is legal to do in the NFL. And Strausser, yes, that stuff got corrected, but it shouldn't have been happening the first few games. And there are still issues that we're seeing that are just basic stuff from the O-line. And, we're going to get to Kendrick Green, who was playing for Shaq Mason in a second. But, overall, yeah, the O-line stuff has gotten better, but there's miscommunication and all that sort of stuff. And it just feels like between Strausser and Slowik, I mean, they almost are detrimental to each other at this point and killing each other. And both of them got to go. I mean, it's a got to go thing. And I don't like sugarcoating it, because like do you want to win a Super Bowl? If you think, oh, Bobby Slowik isn't so bad, that's not the bar, Tom. It's not the bar of, oh, he's not so bad and it's not so bad. Like, if you're going to win a Super Bowl, you got to get somebody that's great. And you know what Bobby Slowik isn't? He's not great.
I don't disagree. I think that he's a second-year offensive coordinator. He looks like it. I think that, 5 years from now, he might be great. I don't know. I don't think he'll be a Texan. If he is, I don't know who they bring in. I just feel like they're trying to help each other out, talking about Strausser and Slowik. And they shored up that issue. We're not seeing tons of false starts. We're not seeing now them being able to block. That's a different matter. When we talked about the delay game and where they're getting, very easy to spot out, they're being able to pick out, when the ball's coming, when it's being snapped. I Bleav that's Strausser and Slowik and CJ simplifying this for maybe Patterson, maybe him too, like saying, okay, we're going to make this simple. And you can't do that against good teams. You can't. You're not going to beat good teams with simple. And they're going to have to get better. And maybe, like you said, both of those guys are looking for a new job at the end of the year. We'll see. I would be fine if they went out and got some guys, because I think part of it is the guys that they have in the locker room. I think you could replace Shaq Mason. I think you could replace Patterson. I think you could replace Kenyon Green and bring those guys back, and maybe it's better. I think also you could fire both of those guys, get two new guys, and maybe the guys on the line are better. It'll just depend on how they want to attack it.
Yeah, and I've watched enough NFL over the years where I Bleav usually it's more coaching and chemistry that help in the offensive line. And this team has neither with this offensive line group. And I don't think it's a simple fix of like, oh, you just keep going out and getting new guys. Get a new offensive line coach. And like I said, the offensive line would be helped if you had an offensive coordinator that could get the guys to snap the ball before there's 2 seconds or 1 second on the clock. I mean, that's an issue too. You know what? The Texans, we're going to finish off with a couple of things from the game, and we'll get to some other stuff, but they catch a break, huge break after the Chiefs drop a touchdown pass. After the field goal, it's still an 8-point game, but the Texans offense follows with a quintessential terrible possession. The typical first down run goes nowhere. We're still doing the first down runs that are just a disaster. Bad protection on second down by Blake Fisher. And then Stroud's sacked on third down. That entire Texan sequence, it's kind of them in a nutshell, Tom. That's it. I mean, that was like, put that in the time capsule for the Texans offense, that whole sequence.
I mean, it's I don't know in that scenario that they could have done anything right other than score. I think we were going to nitpick them regardless. Obviously, they got away from the run because CJ was cooking a little bit. They tried to get back to the run. You definitely don't want to run it on second and long. So I think that would have been the argument if they would have thrown on first down and didn't complete a pass and then not been able to run the ball. And then third down, they obviously got into a passing situation. So here comes the rushers, here comes the blitz, and then there's the sack. I don't love it. Playing from behind is really hard no matter where you do it. It's extremely hard in Kansas City. It seems like they ratchet that thing up to another gear. Their edge rushers are very good. It's tough. I wish the Texans were a little bit better. I understand it. I hope that, we're not talking about this in 3 weeks. We're talking about, the Texans figuring it out.
SH991 says Stroud looked checked out after the injury. We saw the tears, after Tank Dell goes down and all that. I never thought Stroud looked checked out, and he wasn't the problem. The problem was like just about everything else. Stroud was not the problem. And I said earlier in this deal that, Stroud, I felt like played one of his best games outside of that really terrible early interception. It was one of his best games overall. The second interception, the running out of bounds, but his accuracy, he got rid of the ball. They moved the ball. There was a lot good from CJ Stroud in this game. And I don't think he was checked out. The Chiefs put the Texans out of their misery after the 3 and out. And we can close out with that part of the game. I did mention the Jimmie Ward injury earlier, Tom. The reports are no structural damage. You sort of need a miraculous 3-week recovery because there are a bunch of ordinary Joes that you're relying on in the secondary right now. It's Miles Bryant and Jeff Okudah time. Get ready, guys.
Yeah, but you know what, though? If Okudah can be serviceable, and obviously we didn't see a huge sample size. This is a former, top first-round pick. I like Kamari Lassiter to replace Jimmie Ward in that star, that nickel corner. I think that suits him well too. I think he likes to hit. I think he'll be somebody that'll come up and stop, in the run game and get after the quarterback. I thought that was a smart move on Amico Ryan's part to move Kamari to that spot and then play Jeff on the outside. We'll see what happens. In a perfect world, we'd have Kamari on the outside and Jimmie Ward back in on the inside. But I definitely feel like it takes a certain kind of player that is running at 1,000 miles an hour, and Kamari fits that for me.
Yeah, wherever Kamari is, I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about Jeff Okudah. I'm worried about Bryant. I'm worried about these other guys. And I just want to point out for people that are dogging Caserio because you don't have Pro Bowlers backing up when you lose Petrie and Ward, it's real tough, and you can't have like this unreal depth everywhere on a roster. There are things to criticize Caserio about. We've talked about it ad nauseum on the offensive line. However, this situation is a little bizarre, what's happened in the secondary. Although you knew Jimmie Ward's injury prone, he gets injured all the time. This has been a problem throughout his career. It's his problem when he came to the Texans. I said, you needed somebody else really ready to step in because Jimmie Ward was going to get hurt. But Jimmie Ward and Petrie, it's a little too much. Shaq Mason, he has taken his shots this season. Did the Texans miss Shaq at all, Tom, with Kendrick Green out there?
It's tough because Shaq Mason has struggled too. I think everybody on that offensive line has had different moments where they did not look their best. Kendrick Green hasn't played a ton, so it's hard for me to be really, really critical of him. Pressed into emergency service, as a backup dude. We're probably going to get to see more of him, and then we'll be able to judge further. Shaq Mason's been in this league a long time. I think that veteran presence is important.
I was surprised that actually they didn't run Chris Jones more on Kendrick's side because I was keeping an eye out. I'm like, oh, they're gonna school him, and I didn't see it. They gave Kendrick help at times, which I think was big. There's a couple of times I thought he might have gotten ragdolled a little bit, but I went through his snaps, and for the most part, I thought Kendrick Green was fine. And the thing about Kendrick Green is what I love about him on run plays, that dude gets after it. There is an intention about him that we don't always see from Shaq Mason and some of the other guards for the Texans or some of the other offensive line for the Texans. And, the Texans, they lose Blake Fisher at one point and obviously Shaq, but there's no sign of the just activated Kenyon Green, which is quite a statement on Kenyon by this franchise, Tom, but not a surprise, really.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that's begging for Kenyon Green to be pressed into service. I don't know that the Texans are looking to press him into service. So he's there if they need him, but I think that's more of a in case of emergency, okay, we're going to plug this guy in. I don't think anybody after the way his season started and then the injury stuff, I don't think anybody's rushing him back into a starting role.
Oh, no doubt. And I find it interesting that he's even back. I mean, I just thought, you should be able to actually find better guys coming off of practice squads than Kenyon Green. But anyway, I haven't said much about the Texans defense. What did you think, Tom? Because I thought it was a disappointing effort. Whenever the Chiefs needed a drive, they got one. Just 1 sack, 3 tackles for loss, 0 turnovers. Not a great performance.
I disagree. I totally disagree. I think that they were in the backfield a lot. I think that there was holding a lot. People have been talking about all the different stuff. There's pictures out there where literally, I can't think of the number, but he's in a chokehold and there's nothing called. I think the defense got off the field on a 4th down, which, 4th and 2, you feel like Kansas City's going to get. They put them in 4th down a couple different times. To me, to hold them, I feel like, to a reasonable number, and really, if you look at it and go, okay, they probably get a turnover with the one play. I know you said you thought it wasn't going to be a turnover. I disagree. The hand was coming forward with no football in it. That's a fumble. We've had CJ get called for a fumble on a similar play, and that changes the game because that's a touchdown.
They said, I think they said, the ref said no fumble, and the hand was pushing the ball forward is what I saw.
I think it was, like I said, it wasn't a throw. It was like his hand was going forward into the football. If that's a turnover and a touchdown, we're talking totally different. It probably changes the game completely. I think that Kansas City has been able to score on everybody. So I didn't think the Texans were going to hold them to 0 points. I thought they played well. You didn't hear Travis Kelce's name a ton. I think Mahomes had to spread the ball out a ton, which, he can do. He's very good. He's elite. You expect that. Was it a perfect game by the Texans defense? No. Did I think it was good? Yeah, I really do. I think they gave the Texans a chance to win.
By the way, Will Anderson, didn't hear his name called much. 2 tackles is all I saw on the stat sheet. The most disappointing offseason signing's got to be Denico Autry. And I wanted to ask you about this one, Tom, because he's actually not a huge cap hit this year, but next year he's making $8.5 million. And he's a $4.5 million dead cap hit next year. So you kind of cross your fingers and hope Schultz and Autry aren't in kind of this full Jose Abreu career slide, because you've got, if you try to cut both of them next year, it's $20 million in dead cap, roughly, or it might be 24 in dead cap, but that's a lot of dead cap money for 2 guys that you were just hoping we're going to not just provide some veteran leadership, but we're going to be more impactful than they've been this year.
I agree with the Dalton Schultz stuff. I think a lot of people expected more of him. I understand why he hasn't been that guy, but he's totally been disappointing. I don't know what anybody thought Denico Autry was going to be. I don't know that you thought he was going to show up and have like 8 sacks or show up and be TFL monster all the time. I don't think he's bad. He's had moments where he's looked really good.
His PFF is like in the 50s. That's not good. I just, outside of that one play where I think he forced the fumble in the Cowboys game. I just haven't we just haven't heard his name called, the impact. He's not on the field a tremendous amount. I mean, if you were going to go with him, why Barnett? I mean, you don't need both, because Barnett's, depth is great. I have no problem with depth, but, Barnett's doing the same thing at a smaller cost and less of a dead cap hit next year. And, I just don't see it. Like you could have used that money in other places. Now, here's the thing, and people forget this. They signed Denico before Daniil. So they might not have known Daniil was going to happen. So I think that was one of the reasons that Denico is out there. But no matter what, I just wanted to see more plays from Denico. It didn't help that he was also suspended for 6 games, and hopefully that's not going to happen next year. But yeah, I mean, he was somebody that Caserio just raved about in the offseason, and he's a really good player. He's been a really good player. I didn't feel like he made the impact that I wanted to see from him. And, when you're missing some depth in other areas, you're like, well, what was his purpose? Why was he here?
I think he was the Mauricio Dubon, if we're going to use baseball references. I think he was a Swiss Army knife. You could put him on the outside, you could put him on the inside, and you were going to get production. I think the reason he's kind of lost is because you've got all your guys back. He's not asked to be on the field all the time. You've got Mario Edwards back. You've got both of your edge rushers in there. So where sometimes I think, he might get lost is because those guys are there. And they're making plays. So I don't necessarily mind that I'm not hearing Denico Autry's name. I'm more concerned where I'm not hearing Will Anderson's name. I need that.
Yeah,
but I think teams focus on him, and that's something that he's got to get better. Again, he's a young guy. We're talking about a lot of these guys that we need to see more of. CJ Stroud, Will Anderson Jr., and they're year 2 guys. So they're not going to play well every game. I feel like we could talk about Jalen Green and say the same thing.
Will Anderson, though, I mean, for the most part this year, I mean, you look at his overall record this year, and again, there's a huge difference between the production that you're getting from Will Anderson. I'm not just talking about the fact that he's on the field more, but there's a huge difference in, how they grade out, my eye test, the impact Will has on, push at the defensive line. The Chiefs game, it's 6 days rest. Maybe that has something to do with it. It's cold weather. Guys maybe not be moving as fast, all of that sort of stuff. Also, we got to talk about this receiving core because, with Tank, Diggs, and Nico, it's supposed to be the best Texans receiving core ever. Injuries just destroyed it. They played a grand total of 2 whole games together. And again, I am not counting on Tank Dell to play every game next year. You can't. I mean, whatever. If you don't think if you think he's 7 foot like Tom does, and he shouldn't be getting injured all the time, it's all a total accident, that's fine. But the fact is, he's got bad luck. He's got bad juju, if that's the case. He's got bad karma. So they have to get somebody in free agency or the draft. This year, Deontay Johnson was waived. Are you interested in that guy? I mean, it doesn't portend well that they got a very low draft pick for him. And then the Ravens said, after giving up the draft pick, no, thanks. We don't need you anymore. I mean, he doesn't have the best. Do you want him around? Do you want anybody? Is there anybody else on the market that you would be interested in?
It really depends on what you think of John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson. If you think those guys can be serviceable, because anybody you bring in, they're going to have to learn a playbook. They're going to have to get up to speed. I think that takes time, and they're running out of time because the season's ending here pretty soon. So if you think Deontay Johnson would be a bigger body, somebody that you can use as a possession guy, and maybe now Tank is the more over-the-top guy, then maybe. Odell Beckham Jr. is out there. Would you want to see OBJ? I mean, some people have already called for that. He fits more the Tank Dell mold. He's a smaller dude. Maybe that could be something. I don't necessarily know that the Texans are going to run out and get a wide receiver. I think they expect John Mechie to come back. I think they're going to plug him in. I think you're going to get Xavier Hutchinson, and those are going to be your 3 guys. And whoever this Wayne guy is, we need to figure out if that guy can play. So
he's got to know where to be on the field too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is a really interesting comment. I'm glad it was brought up. Why may God, whatever your moniker is, it says, every film I've watched, our wide receivers are in bunch formation and close to the O-line, and the routes are long developing routes. Casey took away the outside, and we never ran a route in the middle of the field. And this is what I do have an issue with Slowik in specifically. One of the other things that I've got issue with, he gets these guys in bunch formation all the time. And you know what that does? It makes it really easy for the defense to, kind of bunch in on CJ Stroud. The way that you have less guys running at CJ Stroud is open things up, have more guys out wide, because you got to cover those guys. And if your offensive line isn't the greatest, the worst thing that you can have done when you're not communicating well, or maybe they're not blocking well or whatever, is have more guys close to the line of scrimmage, close to CJ Stroud. So I don't understand that. There was a play that I saw diagrammed up on X. I'm trying to remember who did it. It might have been Orlovsky. I can't remember, but somebody was diagramming a play showing they had nobody in the middle of the field on a play. And there's just too many times where I've seen the Texans not have available like a quick slant or somebody that Stroud can go to that's like immediately in his line of vision when there is this, offensive line issue or whatever. It's one of a number of issues that I've got with, I just don't understand about this offense at times.
So I do know the play you're talking about. I think it was a fan made thing. I don't think it was Orlovsky, where he basically makes this big circle in the middle. And what I find interesting is like, it's so easy for us to say, hindsight, why the hell isn't somebody in the middle of the field? When in fact, if you look at the play, they do have a check down. It's Dalton Schultz. He's right on the other side of the offensive line. And I think that, that was the option. Now, is Dalton supposed to be a little bit deeper? Maybe. Both of the wide receivers have outbreaking routes, so the safeties go with them. The reason there's no one in the middle of the field is because there is no wide receiver in the middle of the field. And had there been, a safety would have crashed down or a corner would have stayed in. And there's probably plays all across the league where you see stuff like that, but we're hyper-focused because the team is losing. So it's not the easiest job in the world to diagram these plays and to get guys wide open in the middle of the field. I truly think if there was a dude breaking along the middle of the field, you would have seen a safety crash down to him. But when nobody was there, the safety flowed with the corner, which they're supposed to do. It's good on the safeties to, okay, if there's nobody in the middle of the field, I'm going to go with the other wide receivers.
Yeah, it's not like you expect guys to be wide open in the middle of the field all the time. My point is, I want to see that as an option more. And you have guys like Dell and Mechie they were pretty much slot guys, and Diggs is gone. So why hasn't Dell moved more into the slot and you move him more in the middle of the field where maybe you can get him quick inside? All of his routes, every time he catches a pass, it seems like it's near the sideline, to me anyway. So why not more in the middle of the field? Because the thing about Dell is I don't want him running towards the sideline all the time. I want him in the middle of the field because when that guy gets in space and he's got room, boom, he can do some things. And John Mechie, he's built for that too. That's what I want to see more. There's got to be times where you can get somebody open in the middle of the field, like one of those slot guys, and get them into space, because it just seems like there is too much sideline patterns. And Stroud's great at them. I get that. But you got a chance with, these type of guys that can get into space and do some things to do some things, and having that option and not having Stroud to wait for a guy to come out, if he's along the sidelines, to come in the cut going out, and he's got to make that perfect. Like, that's a hard throw to make. Whereas if you have a guy that just does a simple slant, who's in the slot, that's not a hard throw. And it's right there immediately. It's in your face. It's a simple throw, and you get the guy in movement. And that's what you want to see Tank Dell. You want to see Dell and Mechie moving forward when they catch your pass, not running towards the sideline.
So the two things I want to point out: one, the touchdown to Schultz was in the middle of the field. The interception to Schultz was in the middle of the field. And then you talk about running Tank across the middle of the field, and I'm not opposed to that. However, we just saw the week prior where Miami had a guy coming across the middle of the field, and he got absolutely decapitated. So,
but Stroud is not Tua. I think he's better at not leaving his receivers out to dry. I'm not going to equate him with Tua. I think he's a better quarterback than Tua, number one. Number two, Dalton Schultz is not somebody that's going to turn a 5-yard play into a 30-yard play the same way that Tank Dell is. And he's not the guy that I want to see in space. I want to see more Tank Dell in space. I'm more fine with, if you want to run somebody towards the sideline, run Dalton Schultz towards the sideline. I think that makes more sense. And not having Tank Dell. I got it earlier in the season because of Diggs was eating up and he was doing well in the slot. So I get it. The guy's one of the best receivers in the game, doesn't drop balls. I get that. Once Diggs is gone, I just was confused. I was like, why aren't we seeing more Dell in the middle? I mean, I get it. We don't have that optimal, guy on at W1, wide receiver 1 or 2 that's not Nico. But still, I mean, it's one of those things, Tom. Like, I just don't get it. I don't understand that. And again, he doesn't have to be perfect, Slowik, but there's just patterns. We're seeing patterns and stuff that I just don't like. And I don't like the fact that this offense at most of the time just feels like we make the same mistake over and over again, and there's not enough variation in a lot of the things that we're doing. Like for wide receiver screens when all 4 of them were a big fat failure.
I agree. The wide receiver screen thing to me is only good when it works, and it doesn't work enough for me to use it. I think you sprinkle one of those in a game, and even for Texans fans right now, I think that would be too much. Even if it went for a touchdown, I mean, there have been some great plays in Houston Texan lore, whether it be Andre Johnson or Nico Collins, where a wide receiver screen went all the way to the house. But right now, every time they call it, it just feels like a TFL. And maybe that's because our wide receivers are not blockers like you spoke to. And Bobby has to understand that and go, okay, I can't call this play because literally none of those guys can block for whoever I throw the football to. So that's got to be something that he's got to go to the film and learn. And we just ditch that. Just don't even do that. So again, I'm glad if there's any silver lining is that we're seeing this now. I'm going to be more upset. I'm going to be really upset if we see it in a postseason game. I hope that all of these things are tools to, okay, I got to scrap this. I got to scrap that. I got to be in the middle of the field a little bit more. All of these things, I'm okay with you making these mistakes here. If you make them in the playoffs, that's where I'm going to be hypercritical.
Quick side note before we close things out, because we're at about an hour. I just got to mention one thing, non-Texan, real quick. Sports lost an honest-to-goodness legend, one of the best baseball players who ever lived, Rickey Henderson. He's got more steals and more runs scored than any player in history. He has more leadoff home runs, too. By the way, George Springer is number 2. Craig Biggio is number 4 on that list. Henderson once stole 130 bases in a season. The Astros' whole team had 93 steals last year. 93. Nolan Ryan fans probably remember his proclamation after becoming stolen base king that he was the greatest of all time, only to be outdone that same day by Nolan's 7th no-hitter at age 44. But Tom, my personal favorite Rickey memory, and this is what I thought of when he passed away, and it's what I call the greatest heckle of all time. In 1989, Bo Jackson hit this unforgettable dead center field leadoff home run in the All-Star game. A lot of you Bo fans will have seen that. A month later, I'm at the Royals-A's game in Kansas City. I'm sitting in left field. Bo Jackson's playing left for the Royals. Rickey's playing left for the A's. The greatest leadoff hitter in history, Rickey, gets thrown out at second base trying to steal. The inning ends, and as Rickey runs to his position in left, there's a fan just a few feet away from me who yells, "Hey, Rickey, Bo knows leadoff. Do you know leadoff?" Greatest heckle, Tom, in history. And also a couple of just classic Rickey quotes. Legend has it he one time quoted somebody as saying, when they said, quoted John 3:16 to Rickey, Rickey said, quote, "Rickey don't want to hear about John hitting 3:16. Rickey hitting 3:30. And the last one I've got is Harold Reynolds told a story about leading the league in stolen bases in 1987. And it only season in the 80s that Rickey did not lead the league. Harold gets a call from Rickey at the end of the season. He says, "Henderson here." Harold says, "What's up, Rick?" Rickey says, "You ought to be ashamed." Harold says, "What are you talking about?" Rickey says, "You ought to be ashamed. 60 stolen bases? Rickey has 60 at the break." Click. And hangs up the phone. Oh, man. He was all-time character, Tom. That guy, just a legend. I know you do your baseball podcast as well. And just had to tell that a couple of those stories. Love Rickey Henderson. And he's definitely going to be missed, man.
Yeah, Rickey Henderson was definitely a GOAT. The A's named their stadium after him. You know, like there's no other honor that you can give a guy than naming your ballpark after him. Rickey Henderson was an icon for the Oakland Athletics. I think when you think of that team, if it doesn't start with him, I mean, I can think of some other names, but for me, it has to start with him. And yeah, definitely sad to hear that he passed. You know, dude was a force.
I assume you mean not the stadium. You mean the field? Is it like called Rickey Henderson Field or something? It's Oakland Coliseum, I guess.
Right. But the field is Rickey Henderson Field. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was somebody that posted like a photo of Rickey walking out in Oakland and, he's wearing his jersey and he said, last shot I got a Ricky Henderson after their last game in Oakland. There's something fitting because I'll always remember him as an Oakland A. I mean, that's where he really had some of his biggest prime years, and there's something fitting about him passing away and, not having to see Oakland and Sacramento and then in Las Vegas and all that sort of stuff. Before we close things out, just a quick reminder to check out Tom on the Bullpen podcast. And like many of you, we're going to be juggling family on Christmas Day. So no live postgame after Texans Ravens. Instead, the postgame will be Thursday. What time are you thinking about, Tom, on Thursday for the postgame show?
What time are you thinking about for the postgame show, Rob?
Sometime early afternoon again. You want to do that, or you want to wait till the evening for that?
I'll be free. I took the day off to spend the time with the boys, so I'll have the entire day. I'll just have to corral them so we could do this, but you let me know and I'll be there.
All right, let's do this around 1 p.m. So look for that. Instead of the post-game show, I hope everybody will enjoy a good Texans game on Wednesday, and somehow they figure out how to make it fun and interesting and not as much of a struggle and not as many injuries as they did yesterday. If you subscribe on YouTube, you're going to get the notification as well when we're going to run that. In case you missed it, Friday, I posted my take on the Astros moving on from Bregman and signing Christian Walker. You might also want to check out my chat earlier this week with Astros future podcast host Jimmy Price on the Kyle Tucker trade and prospects who could help the outfield and pitching this season. Some sad news for Houston Sports Talk as well. Stephen Kerr had to step aside as my regular co-host because of some added work obligations. So for now, the show is going to be more guest-driven. I'm going to miss Stephen as a co-host, and because he's also an incredible person who I love hanging out with every week. I want to wish all you out there watching and listening a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays. Same to you, Tom. What do you say we bring a stocking full of coal to Raven fans? Can we do that this next game?
Hey, I hope Beyonce sings some right out the stadium with an L.
Yeah, at least we'll get if nothing else, we get some Beyonce at halftime, and hopefully she's not carried off the field on a stretcher like the Texans. I hate that's a little maybe cruel, but anyway, thanks again for taking some time on a Sunday. Go enjoy the games the rest of the day, and we'll talk to you guys on Thursday.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, you can support the show by subscribing on YouTube and commenting on the videos. Listen to Houston Sports Talk on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and Google. Don't forget to tell a friend and share our show on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.